Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're finding us on this wonderful day, day 325 on Humanity Rising. And no, you did get the right channel. Jim is not with us today. And so I have had the delight to be sharing this moment with you for the next 90 minutes. As you can see behind me, Girl-Driven Solutions, the SDG Makeover. That is the Humanity Rising Women's Summit. See what we did? We reversed the I can't even move my head right. We switched the SDG to the GDS for Girl-Driven Solutions. And that summit is going to get launched on the stage in October 25th. And the summit will be actually held on April the 12th and 13th of next year. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to welcome us into a conversation about character development for regenerative societies. And so when I think about that, I think as a Canadian, because I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta this morning, and we just had our election on Monday. We re-elected a minority government. And you might say, a minority government, that's bad news, isn't it? And I would say, no, that's good news. Because what Canadians did is re-elect another minority government. We had one, we went to the polls, and we said, as a nation, we're okay with having our governance performed by a party collaboration. You know, when I think about our topic today, which is character development, we say it's about how do we come into spaces and be the best humans we can be? And how do we stretch across our differences and understand what we're really here to do together? It might have been considered a $600 million cabinet shuffle. It might be considered a $600 million email from the Canadian public to our governing bodies. But what it really was, in my mind, is the shifting times in which we live, where the issues are so complex that one party cannot hold all of the principles, philosophies, and policies that are going to be necessary for us as we move forward. One thing that did change between 2019 and 2021 was the climate issue. Climate became the #1 issue among Canadians who wanted to see how we were going to be as a nation playing the climate activism reality. That's important. That's a message from Canadians to our governing bodies. Also, childcare. I think it's very interesting when we think of childcare, it's discussed as an expense and not an investment in bringing women into the workforce. We've got so much to change in how we even see the issues and the challenges facing us. So, character development, I sure hope that those that are governing us can listen into today, because we're going to understand what is character development in a time of rapid change. In the time of Code Red, we're all being asked to evolve our character. Yes, we have youth that are shaping in real time, and they have much to teach us about the character that we need to rise into as we take on our planetary ecosystem. So today we're going to have a beautiful meditation. It's going to be done by an expert, which is Diane Tillman. And in a moment, I'm going to invite Diane in to do that. But before I do, I'm going to welcome in my co-host, Kurt Kruger.
Hello, everybody. I welcome you all with great respect and love. That's the guiding force. There's nothing more powerful. That's all we get to focus on, and the force will change everything. During the Blitz in World War II of London, people came together, as Leslie was saying, in the neighborhoods that they thought were going to be the worst. They had less violence, they cooperated more, they thrived. This is what we're learning today, is how to be able to be human again, to be really coming from the heart and guiding our whole life with that. So enjoy this day. We have two incredible guests that have been here present for about doing the work for about 30 years at least. Here's what we get to do. You will learn things today that will spark you into action. And it will change that whole fear element that's being promoted all the time. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kurt. So I'm going to welcome in Diane Tillman, who has been, always has been an educational psychologist, who many of you already know very well in her work in living values. And before we get into the actual living values, we would love for you, Diane, to take us into our meditation, to bring us into this space for today.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Kurt. It's really lovely to be with you all. And good morning, or good evening, good afternoon to all of you. So be comfortable and breathe in the light of peace. As you breathe in the light of peace, let the muscles relax. Let any tensions melt away. And breathe in that light of peace. Let it enter every cell. Let it surround the spirit, the soul. And then let the highest one surround you with the light of love. And breathe in that light of love. And know that you are love. You are a source of good. You are a source of love for our planet and all of humanity. And as you breathe in that light of love, please think of two values that you think would most change the world to the way you want it to be. Better for all, peaceful, a healthy planet. What two values do you feel that if everyone lived them, that would happen? Allow those to be in your heart as you breathe in that love and anchor them. For each one of you is right. And let us extend our hands of light, our hands of love to each one in this space that we're creating, this heart-centered space. For it is only love that will heal us all and heal our planet. Breathe in, wiggle your toes, move your shoulders, ground. May I echo Kurt and Leslie's welcome to you all as we join together. So today, Leslie and the team have asked me to share about living values education. And so I'm delighted to do that because I see it as a real force for helping our planet. Not only move towards peace, but to move towards healthy oceans, a healthy earth again, and people that are enthusiastic about the change that they make and know that they can make a beautiful change. So there are two main components of living values education. One of them is the creation of a values-based atmosphere. Our hypothesis is that when people are treated in such a way that they feel loved, respected, valued, understood, and safe, that they move towards their potential. So this is the premise of our values-based atmosphere. And so when we go into schools, or currently when people take courses online or read this book about a training guide, they're looking at how to stay in the top half of this circle where everyone is moving towards their potential. How to eliminate the things that cause children, young adults to feel inadequate, hurt, safe, scared, and unsafe. So we invite teachers and now adults around the world through this program to create those spaces where we can nurture hearts and create safety so that people can bloom without the fear that empties them out and causes them to go into depression or anger and violence. So it's really a magical thing to walk into a school with a values-based atmosphere. There was a little boy locally that was only 4 years old, and he'd been kicked out of 3 preschools and told by the director of the last preschool, his mother was told, that he would need a full-time aide if he entered public school. So this little kid, he was just a pistol, and he went into the school, this daycare center that had been doing living values for about 10 years. So he went in with all his negative behaviors, and nobody got upset with him, but they just dealt with it in a very loving way. And so he came to school the 3rd day. He decided to give up all the other behaviors and just became one of the well-behaved, happy, cooperative, playful children. I love stories like that when I hear them. And I think it's amazing. And it works for little kids, it works for big kids. Values-based atmosphere, a story by a teacher. He was a teacher in a high school in Brazil. And there was one of his male students that was always angry and a terrible student. And one day he called Paulo Barros a terrible name in front of the class. And Paulo told me that he turned around and he faced the blackboard and he gritted his teeth and he said, "I am the living values teacher. I must stay peaceful." So he's staring at the board saying that to himself. He gets himself in control. He turns around and he says to the student, "That's an interesting name to call your friend." The teenager left the class. He came back the next day. Instead of sitting at the back, he sat at the front and became one of the best students. So very interesting when we don't respond to anger with anger, when we stay centered in our peace and our self-respect and our love. So the second the second component of living values education is our curriculum. We've just updated the books because of the change in time. So this is book 1. It's for children from 3 to 7. There is another one for children from 8 to 14, another one for young adults. And these have all been updated because times have changed. This program was conceived in 1996, but we're in a different world 25 years later. So the books have to deal with drugs, social media, climate change and the crisis. Some of the elements are still the same. Like all of them begin with imagining a peaceful world. The reason is when I worked as a school psychologist, I used to work in gang areas and I loved the kids. I had a wonderful time. And once I had this group of pre-gang boys and they were so angry and, there was just so many, they were creating chaos. And so I asked them to imagine a peaceful world. They ended up, I did a visualization with them. They ended up creating the most incredible vision. So I took a great big piece of paper and we laid it out on the round table and they all drew what it would be like. And it gave us somewhere to start. So in Living Values, we help them open up this so they can see the beauty inside and they have something to work for. And so this is one of the foundational premises of Living Values education, that all people are good inside. And when provided with an atmosphere that is nurturing and safe and relevant, where they can work for change in a way that is appropriate for their culture and their setting, that they can make an incredible difference. And so there's activities. One of them is mind mapping. For example, they mind map what happens in a peaceful world and all the effects for the self, for the family, for work, for business, for health. For little kids, it's different. And then violence. Once we did Living Values, I went back 5 years in a row to Thailand. And in this two camps of 11,000 people who only had white rice, salt, and fish paste to eat, there was so much violence. The children were so depressed, they just stood and stared at us for hours. It was heartbreaking. Not one child played. And at the end of 2 years, those kids had really committed to peace. They understood that difference. They were Karen tribe refugees whose villages were burned down and helicopters attacking them as they tried to escape in the jungle. And they really understood peace. And before they did Living Values, the teachers beat them, their parents beat them. They fought all the time. They were killing people in camp. And after 2 years, it was a different world. I remember being in a Jeep and we drove down the riverbed that was almost dry. And I saw a father holding his toddler in a bamboo hut with leaf roofs. And it was so amazing. I saw little girls playing, a gang of kids running around playing and laughing as they swatted a ball made of plastic and rubber bands with their flip-flops. And it was amazing. But the teachers told me, and the camp leader, that there was zero violence in the camp after 2 years and a lot of love. So it's a magical thing. But also climate change. So in each book, there's 8 values modules. And one of them is peace, which is really important for people, for well-being, for everyone. But also Another one of the 8 values is simplicity and caring for the earth and our oceans. And so for the little kids, there are stories. For the 8 to 14-year-olds, there's another story. For 3 to 7-year-olds, there are stories. For older kids, there's really looking at some of the youth uprisings around the world, what the Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez has said about that. And then really delving into some of this, why there's global warming, to look at the Sustainable Development Goals, to see how one value can affect so many of them. They actually create a tree on a board with leaves for each value and each Sustainable Development Goal, what it affects, what they can do. But hope is important. Individual action, realizing the impact of each action so that they're inspired to change. It's actually said that if everyone were to be vegan, that we could reverse climate change in a matter of a few years. So I don't want to run over my time, and I haven't. Wonderful. So I'm going to end with a story from the 3 to 7. This is in simplicity and caring for the earth and our oceans. We look at the beauty of nature. We look at how advertisers try to influence us. And we look at climate change. But for little kids, we have stories, okay? So there's 2 little children, Rosa and David, and they help a little bird who's caught in a tree, who is bound to the tree because his little claw is wrapped in wire and string and he can't get free. So they help him be free from that. And later on, when they go to the store to pick up something for their mom, they see a bunch of birds. They think they're talking. And when they get back, one of them does talk to them. They got permission from the Mother Earth to speak to the children because the planet needed help. So this is all to get the children to understand about the earth and to do some things that can help. So anyhow, the birds all wanted to talk. And so the blue heron said to the little tern, "Okay, you tell them, little tern." And the tern said, "Well, maybe it'll be easier if I tell them in a poem." So this is what he said to the children. "Be friends with each other, be loving and sweet, to girls and boys and all you meet. Be friends to the birds, the cats and the dogs, the horses, geese, the goats and the frogs. Pick up your trash. Don't pollute the water, don't waste things, please. Don't poison the ground, the water, sky, or trees. Pick up your trash. Be a friend to each other, all countries and groups. Love and respect us animals and the earth too. Recycle, don't waste. Pick up your trash. Humans are powerful and smart, but learn to be kind. Then we'll all live safely and have a wonderful, glorious time. The colors of the earth will sparkle. The meadows and flowers will bloom. We birds will sing happily and not be in a state of gloom." I'm certain I've taken up my time now. So all good wishes to you all. And thank you for being part of this incredible group. Each one of us is so important in working for a better world for all and in healing our beautiful planet.
Oh, Diane, whenever you come on the screen with me, when we're in dialogue, I automatically feel this sense of peace and wholeness and joy and calm. You just elude this powerful sensibility of love. And I'm curious, what has been the path for you to uncover this essence of yourself? Because I'm sure all of us could benefit from understanding your path as we think about our own.
I wear two hats in life, Leslie. And when I was 30, I was offered this incredible job with the State Department of Education. And I thought, if I take that job and work 60 hours a week, I will never know myself. So I went to India and learned to meditate. And so what happened is that I came back into my work as a school psychologist, and my belief had changed. I now had learned from the Brahma Kumaris that all souls are naturally good, and there wasn't one soul on the planet that wasn't. It changed. And I'd learned how to download love and peace. And that made such a difference in my counseling cases. They got 50% better faster. And so being full of peace and love helps a lot. And it helps us be creative in who we are. So thank you, Leslie. It's very kind of you to say it. But, because of my background, I feel passionately about children. I want each child to be safe. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, we asked our publisher for a separation so that we could offer these units free of charge around the world. So on the livingvalues.net website, anyone can download it free of charge, and anyone can train to be a facilitator. It doesn't matter if they're an educator or not. They can do it with community groups, be it business or whatever. It works with the Khmer Rouge, and refugees. It works with businessmen. But I love working with children. It's a delight to be here.
It's an absolute delight for us to have you. There was a story, though, about how when you were, I believe, were you in Israel or in Palestine when you were working with a suicide bomber?
Oh, I was in Lebanon.
Lebanon.
And I was working with kindergarten teachers who were Palestinian. And they lived in this horrible camp and refugee camp. And they came to a training, and we did this training for these kindergarten teachers. And there's this one activity, because there's a story about an ocean of love, and they have to make crumpled up pieces of paper that look like sponges, and they put eyes on them. And then as the follow-up activity after the story and the art activity, a third of them stand back to back in a circle while the others dance around them, and they squeeze love on them from their sponge of love. And so these women were singing in their language, and we were all dancing around. But afterwards, yes, one of them shared that about her experience in consideration of being a suicide bomber. And but after the training, when they shared, we had 6 days together, because these people had been denied a childhood. And they said to me things like, "I've never felt peace before." And one of them looked at me and she said, "If we were all to learn this, there would be peace in the world." We had such a wonderful time together.
I just want to come and hang out with you. That's just, I mean, such a beautiful, resonance of what you bring. And I just want to clarify, you also, these languages that the Living Values is in, I believe you have a Spanish version.
Because we have new books, we're slowly getting them together. We just published the 3 to 7 in Spanish. And right now, yesterday I sent the files for young adults, and the 814 is already being worked on. So by the end of next year, we'll have all 3 books published in Spanish, and we're also working on French right now. So we're doing that, the regional languages, and then others are working on other languages. But meanwhile, you can translate 1 unit at a time, and we can put it up free of charge. So if you want to translate, let me know.
What a great invitation. What a great invitation to be truly in open space co-creation.
And this is the important thing that is happening now, is this idea that we are gifting the world with love. And this, I got to know you, Diane, because you're living very close to where I am, and take time with you. We brought it into a ghetto school, is what some people call it. And it made the school not have a police officer that all the other schools had, because of the way that the PE program did it. It wasn't even the whole school, but the PE program, the physical education program, teaches every single student, whether they are mentally, supposedly, or socially challenged or not, everybody gets taught PE. And we integrated it into that program. It's such a gift. And that gifting to others, the energy to be able to teach others at any level, whatever your juice is, or to share it. What a gift. Thank you.
So we're going to have you come back later with us as we move to our next contributor. But Diane, I've already seen in the chat that Claire is going to be interested in translating, helping you with the French translation. So I'm saying that as this broadcast goes out to other folks who are, vibing with what we're bringing, to step into the space of co-creation and translation for your neighborhood, for your language. Beautiful. Thanks, Diane, so much. And we're going to have you back in a few minutes after we bring in Daniel. So I'm about to introduce Daniel Allen, who is with the Virtues Project and is a founder of Soul Expansion. And we're really delighted to have you here, Daniel. You can undo your video and we can see that beaming face of yours. There he is. There he is. All right. And, when I think of the notion of virtues, I mean, I know that virtue started with verte in the Latin translation of man. It was the original sense of man. And then as it evolved through different times in history, it became sort of the pursuit of moral excellence. And even when we say that, there's always this thing in my stomach that goes, who's to say what moral excellence is, right? I mean, is that holding judgment about what is right and what is wrong? And how do we understand it without judging, but with a deep appreciation? So I want to turn the mic over to you, Daniel, and let us in on what is the Virtues Project, what is Soul Expansion, and how are you bringing it to the world?
Thank you. First, I want to appreciate all of you for having me. I'm honored. And I like how you reversed the model of saving the best for last so that Diane got to go first. That was wise of you. Keeps them hooked for the rest of the time. Yeah, there's a lot in that to speak with. So what I'd like to do is, I'm actually here sort of with arms in 3 different organizations that can serve what we're doing today. So I'll touch upon the 3 of them a little bit. But I also want to give an example So, Diane, I want to appreciate you for your lovingness and your gentleness and your peacefulness. And Leslie, I want to appreciate you for your creativity and your thoroughness. And Kurt, I want to appreciate you for your dedication. And it can be that simple. And we forget, it doesn't matter. You know, I don't believe in personal and professional relationships. They're relationships. Those become justifications to compartmentalize our behaviors. So I got very curious at a young age. My first spiritual awareness was actually at 5 years of age. It was actually off-putting to my kindergarten teacher. And I just find it amazing that it's such a simple thing, but I guess a lot of things are, huh? It's the consistency that makes that difference. But the fuel of any relationship, be it family, friends, or more, is appreciation. And that's difficult because most of us, there's a beautiful poem by not only my favorite poet, but somebody who I consider to be cut from the cloth of, which is Hafiz. And he says, if you've been in this world more than a day, you've already had stones rained upon your face. I mean, it's not an easy journey of soul, this walk through life. And it becomes something that it's so tempting, alluring to become self-centered. But if we become self-centered, it's really difficult because no man is an island. So we're cutting ourselves off from everything else. So I'm here representing soul expansion, which is a modality that I was gifted with, that I started authoring at about 29 years of age. I'm now 52 years of age, and it has expanded. And that's how we came to the name of the modality, soul expansion. It really is an intention for the individual to expand themselves within their walk through life and their own journey of soul. And within my work, I had no intention of being a practitioner. I'm a spiritual and emotional counselor and an author, but I had only intended to be the latter. But as I started to put the work out with colleagues and families and friends and ask for feedback, what I started to realize is they wanted to talk with each other. And in doing that, those conversations led to greater epiphany and awareness in my writing, which led to more conversations, which led to eventually me realizing that while my previous professional background in technology for many years that was successful is an area of genius, it wasn't my purpose. And here I found my genius and purpose. And inside of soul expansion, there's a process. So my understanding from partners and colleagues is that out of the 15 tools that are currently in soul expansion, there are about 9 that are nowhere else to be found. There's always going to be some overlap for any of us that are sort of coming to the same stream. And one of those is called defining virtues. I got really curious because when I kind of mapped things, if you will, I have this gift. As we know, people are often left or right hand dominant. Some people are equal, and we call them ambidextrous. But what people don't realize is that we also are the same with the hemispheres of our brain. If you have a healthy brain, you generally are either left or right hemisphere dominant. You predominantly take in your life experience and make your decisions accordingly through whatever that hemisphere is. And then there's a small percentage of people that what they call balanced brain or equal brain, where you use both hemispheres equally. You can be tested for this. And I got very curious when I was 22 years of age, because I had had an epiphany. And like most epiphanies, it was probably percolating for years and finally just popped. But what led me to this was actually, I had bought my first computer in 1992 before the internet was in the public's eye. I didn't really want the thing, but I was pretty comfortable financially at that time. And I made a choice. I thought, yeah, sure, why not? This will be fun. And I spent about 5 hours on tech support between 2 different companies over the course of 2 days. And I finally ended up having to spend $4.95 a minute to call a 900 number. And in 10 minutes, the issue was solved. It couldn't be in the previous 5 hours, but in 10 minutes after I paid another $50, it was. And when I concluded that phone conversation, I was feeling angry. I couldn't believe that I spent $1,500 and then I had to spend another $50 the next day to actually get this thing to function the way I was told it would. And I remember sitting there in my apartment in Los Angeles. I remember sitting on the floor. I was on fire. And I just remember stating to myself, gosh, no other industry in the world could get away with this. You can't go buy a car, it breaks down 2 days later, and they tell you, oh, well, pay us for it. And I just had something come out of me, and I thought, this is ridiculous. No artisan creates anything without knowing the back door. No chef can create a dish without knowing his recipe. No painter paints without knowing the color palette. So then I thought to myself, then what's my back door? And the real-time conversation that occurred was basically this. I wonder what my back door is. I guess it's my soul. I don't even know if I have a soul. I mean, if I didn't have a shred of empathy, I would even, debate that. I think I live from here like 80% of the time, and here maybe 20% of the time. I wonder what it would look like if I inversed that. And that was followed by another really big epiphany. I thought to myself, okay, then how do you have a conversation with God? Because I don't believe that religion is the only way you can have a conversation with God. I want to go, factory direct. I don't want a middleman. How do you do that? So I asked aloud in that same conversation with myself on the floor. So then what is the language of God? And this was the real-time conversation and epiphany that followed that. Well, I don't think that it's Chinese. I don't think that it's Hebrew, because that was even preceded by Aramaic, but I don't even think it's that, because that's created by man. So what is the language of God? And then it struck me. I could pick any 3 places in the world. It doesn't matter. Istanbul, Hawaii, Alaska. And if you drop me off a plane in Istanbul and I get off that plane in Istanbul and I go, people already know I feel fearful. If I go to Hawaii and on a beach in Hawaii and somebody walks up to me and I'm laughing and playing, they know I feel joyful. If I'm in Alaska and somebody's walking up to me and they see me just wiping tears and crying, they already know I feel sad. And then it struck me, of course, language, God is feeling. Absolutely. In fact, I could probably prove that more eloquently by stating it's also the only language that transcends species. If you have a pet, a dog, a cat, what have you, I have horses, they know what we feel. And to me, it was so clear that feelings are the language of God. And then it struck me, well, if I want to learn Spanish, I have to really do 2 things. I have to learn the Spanish, but then I actually have to practice it, keep using it. So clearly, if I want to get closer to God, I've got to not only be willing to feel my feelings, but then I've got to be willing to continue to feel them through completion. And then I realized that I'm misattuned. So then I started this thing that I would do with people. What's your favorite instrument? Somebody would say a guitar. And I'd say, is that a truth? And they'd say, yes. I said, your complete truth. And they'd say, yes. I say, I debate that. I think you like the sound of a well-tuned guitar. Let's be clearer. I started to realize how many people are misattuned with what they feel, which then, of course, most everybody here in this audience knows. That we then project it on other people, and then we want them to pick up our deficiencies or our faults, foibles, whatever you want to refer to them as. I just refer to them as, an area of focus. But most of us are walking through life, be it in an intimate relationship or otherwise, wanting people to fulfill us, rather than realizing it's within ourselves. So then, because I'm balanced brain, what tends to happen is my right brain latches onto a concept that it tasks my left brain to quantify. And I thought, okay, so everybody's chasing happiness. And it seems to be that the model is, it's like that ball that you go to bend down and pick up, and then your foot kicks it another few feet, and you keep doing that. It seems so elusive. How do you get to happiness in this world? And then I realized what most people are calling happiness is really the sustained feeling of joyfulness. Okay, great. How do I get to that feeling of joyfulness? So I mapped it. And what I found is that we generally find we feel joyful authentically when we're in integrity. Cool, what is integrity then? Integrity is when I'm actually honoring the journey of my soul, my sacred contract, my agreement to be here in this walk through life, to let it refine me to whatever it's supposed to do. And when I accept that, but I make choices that are advocating with love for myself and others, then I'm in integrity. That's when I feel joyful. So it appeared to me that the simplest way to consistently feel joyful is to consistently be in integrity. And I get it. It's not easy. And that's what soul expansion is all about, is taking somebody on a personal journey to discover within themselves, first of all, who they truly are, and then how do I align life around that? As I'm often remarked in my personal relationships as an oak tree. And it's true. Life swirls around me. I don't swirl around life, but it wasn't always that way. I know what it took to get here. But when you do that, what you find is I'm actually honoring my agreement with God, source, Allah, Buddha, creator, power, universe, whatever you prefer to name that entity. I actually have an agreement to come down here. It was an agreement. And I'm honoring myself and my creator when I live according to personal integrity. And I'm not easily swayed by the belief systems, the values of others, or my humanity. I thought it would take me a year to inverse. And it got me somewhere. It took me about 6, but by the time I was about 30 years of age, I think I was able to fairly well accomplish that. And that's been the man that I am for about the past 21 years. But that's what soul expansion is about. And in that process, there's something we call defining virtues. I had realized that every single one of us is inborn with a defining set of virtues, a satchel, if you will, these little gems inside. And so I got curious about virtues. And the way I describe a virtue, because there's a lot of religious connotation around virtue, which is inaccurate. In fact, the way that I describe it is that if you take all of the world religions, of which there's about 1,500, or you even take the top 10 that people can really only name, and you stack them and you turn them ever so perfectly that you can peer from top to bottom, and then you remove religion, whatever falls to the ground is a virtue. It's the commonality. It is essentially the molecules of our character, and it exists in every single one of us, regardless of what your religious construct or faith belief is. And if that's the case, that's amazing, because now the playing field has been leveled for all of us. So what I started doing is helping people determine, what is your defining set of virtues? What were you inborn with? And what I've discovered over 14 years of my practice is that I've seen as few as 3 and as many as 11, 12, and it doesn't really matter. That's what you need to succeed through your journey of soul, your walk through life. So then I got curious, because people would ask, what's my quest? And it eluded me for a short period of time, but then it struck me, absolutely, every single one of us in our humanity, even in my suspected 20%, if you will, every single one of us has a part of ourselves that we think is unlovable, that we think that if anybody knew it, including those close with us, they wouldn't receive us or accept us or love us the same way. So we hide it. And if you look at common tropes, be it Harry Potter, be it Star Wars, doesn't matter. We often represent the holiness, the purity with white, and the evil or the bad with black. And it struck me. I remember my mother used to watch The Guiding Light when I was growing up. Oh yeah, Debbie Boone, you light up my life. Of course. Again, whatever you refer to your creator, it's light. So then it would stand to reason that rather than a gentleman with horns and a pitchfork, or some sustained terrible existence, I guess the further I go from light, the darker it gets. I think that's on me. If I'm in personal integrity, if I'm responsible for my own feelings, thoughts, and actions, then I'm the one responsible. And I'm realizing I'm choosing to be in that darkness. If I can find those parts of me that are unlovable and find my own way to bring them into the light where they are received and dissolved, and I can be at peace with them, wow. And more, the light keeps shining in deeper and deeper in that cavern. And to me, that's actually what personal enlightenment is. It's finding ourselves within this expression, staying connected to our source, to our God, to our creator, and recognizing that we get to be of service in our walk through life, an example of love to others. So we actually are equipped with everything we need and the quest itself. And that led me, by happenstance, to the Virtues Project, which is actually celebrating its 30th anniversary tomorrow, which I'll talk about in a moment. for 30 years. Linda Kaplan Popoff and Dr. Dan Popoff got very curious and they created this, and that became known as the Virtues Project about 25 years ago, maybe. Then they created the Virtues Project Educator's Guide for the school systems, as well as the Family Virtues Guide, and then a handful of other small products to supplement and to uphold those. And from there, they realized it was much bigger than them. And about just over a decade ago, they turned it into a global nonprofit. We're in 135 different countries now, and I'm on the board of directors. And what we basically do is we find ways to take that character education and fit it to so many different models, including families, individuals, school systems, the workplace. We just eradicated corporal punishment in elementary schools last year. Tanzania, up until last year, we had a third grade child, and they even just spoke out of turn. They could be called to the front of class and caned. And now we're working with the middle school systems there, but then we do work in California that's very different, or we do work in Fiji that's very different, or we do work in Canada that's very different. But yet it's the same foundation of that. Yeah, so on that note, before I conclude, I want to appreciate everybody for your patience and for creating the space for me. And I just want to go over and do a couple of things. One of the products that we have is called Virtues Card Deck, and there's a few different kinds with different ideals and themes. And, I would like to pull one for us to set the tone for the day. And I'd also like to show you very quickly, because since I'm representing 3 different organizations, I know it can easily get confused. So you'll see behind me that I have all 3 websites available. The Virtues Project is the nonprofit organization. And you can go to thevirtuesproject.com if you're interested, and you'll even see right there is a button to join the event tomorrow. Underneath that, you'll see virtueshop.com, which actually is the primary partner that sells the products created by the Virtues Project and many other artisans throughout the world. And there's a coupon code under there for HR, for Humanity Rising. We'll give you 30% off any purchase between now and the end of Sunday. And then you'll see on the other side is Soul Expansion. And if you choose to go there, you can learn about me, my practice, and there's also a coupon code there, the same one, HR, for 30% off should you choose to step forward with that. So with that said, I'd like to once again thank everybody and begin a Virtues card pick.
I'm really stoked about this part too. I loved all your stories, Daniel, but you know what? I am a card maniac. I love them. My twin sister and I, that's what we gift each other constantly, are card decks, because they bring such insight in every moment. So you're choosing from one particular deck in this moment, correct?
Correct. And can you
I guess we don't see anything at the moment. It's a black screen.
All right, I think I got dropped for a moment. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Wonderful.
We're all here to pull share our energy for the pulling of the card.
All right, can you see that card?
Not yet. There we are. We got it.
Cooperation is what came up. And so I had gotten cut off just as you were completing what you were showing, Leslie. So if you need to reiterate it, please do. But this particular card deck was designed. You can find this at virtueshop.com, and you can use HR for 30% off. It's a rather new deck. It's the Resilience deck. And the reason I chose this deck to do our pick from was I think it centers around these wonderful, lush, natural locations through the entire world. In this case, as you can see, the rice fields of Bali. And I see nature as the perfect representation and model for resilience. It includes flexibility, acceptance of whatever is occurring. And in that, it adapts. And not just adapts, but thrives, continues, moves on. And that's really what resilience is about. So I'll read this for us. This is a common practice we'll do. The Virtues Project will do a Virtues card pick. So the card is cooperation. Together we are more. All the desirable experiences that we cherish or aspire to attain are dependent on cooperation and interaction with other sentient beings. That's a quote from the Dalai Lama. And both he and Oprah have endorsed the Virtues Project. Well-being depends more on cooperation than competition. We seek not to overpower, but to empower. Respecting all viewpoints, a greater truth arises. Joining forces, we can change the world. And you'll see that when you go to the Virtue Shop, there's an entire line for kids, there's denominational, non-denominational, all different kinds of faith. There's posters that they can put in their rooms. There's kids decks. There's a plethora, just an amazing variety to move the work forward. But before I conclude, I just want to ask anybody that would like to speak. If this card has moved you, how would you like to speak to cooperation?
That's one of the keys that we taught in our PE program is cooperative game activities. And it brings kids to be able to learn to be together, as Diane and you both say, about in peace. And they create new games even that have never been created before. We had a little Cholita, a young lady that was what some people call gangbanger. And when she was in our PE class to start, she would never move a foot away from her leg where she's standing to be able to touch a soccer ball that was passing by to head it to one of her friends. She'd just stand there. But when we let her create, not let her, but the whole team create a game, she did not stop playing the game. She was invested in it. Why? Because it was this cooperation, it was the collaboration, it was the teamwork. It was so beautiful. It brings it out in all of us. And this is so magical, like what we've been able to play with today with beautiful cards like this. Thank you.
So this is a beautiful card. And I think that we sort of, I go into that naturescape, and I see how nature's cooperating amongst herself with how she's bringing the lushness of the flora together with the pasture. Magnificent. I have a couple of scenarios I want to run by us, if I may now. So we're going to keep in the spirit of cooperation, because that's the energy that we're being asked to bring in. We've got a couple of questions from our chat. So I want to just run a couple of scenarios with you. So one of them is a question that Savannah has raised, and I'd love to hear from both of you. And that is, do we really need to dissolve the shadow side of ourselves in order to embrace the beauty, the love? In other words, just to underline this, Olivia Lang just wrote a really powerful book called Freedom. And she speaks about that humans have an innate destruction and creation within them. It's part of the human species. Mm-hmm. And so the question that Savannah is raising is, do we really dissolve that other shadow, that other part of ourselves, in order to bring in the light? Is that the kind of work that we do, or do they cohabit in a different way? Diane, would you go first? And then I'm going to go to Daniel.
Sure, I'd love to. I think it's very interesting that you use the word dissolve. And I think that is a perfect word. Sometimes people try to go into spirituality or love or peace, and they try to bypass the other emotions. And it doesn't work in terms of long-term integration. And it can actually split your personality, which is not a good thing. So to heal the self, to be aware of our positives and our negatives, to be aware that under all anger is hurt or fear, and to recognize when we're in a negative motion and say, okay, sweetie, what's happening with you? And to learn how to hold our pain with respect and to heal it with love, to surround it with love, to understand it, to learn how to be gentle so that in our mind we can nurture and feed the part that is that is loving and kind, and help it grow and collect energy, but then to use that energy also to deal with our negativities. And what happens is they start transforming. And I find, for example, my scared, whiny self, it starts to grow up, and it changes from 5 to 8, but then it becomes such a source of joy and wisdom for me. So it's a delightful process, but I love the word dissolve. That's very interesting.
Thanks, Diane. Daniel, what do you think?
Well, I don't like have-tos generally. Nobody does. So let's rephrase that a little bit and say, is it worthy? Is it beneficial? I can tell you that, you know, what we suppress, we express one way or another. And you can play whack-a-mole with yourself and you can bury something. It will show up in other areas of your life. It's systemic, it's your soil. I don't know that there's a have-to. I don't think that it's anything punitive. But what I would share is that, is it a responsibility? Is it, again, part of that sacred contract? Do you believe in the randomness that you were here, or do you believe that you chose to be here? And I would also conclude the idea with this. You know, I started my career path as a kindergarten, first grade teacher before we gone into business and before I did that. And I can tell you this, my son right now is 9 years of age. And, you know, if he doesn't do his work in 4th grade, he's not going to be very well prepared for 5th grade. Now, I'm not wise enough to suggest I know what happens when I conclude this life experience, but it seems to me that wherever I may be going, probably want to be somewhat prepared. And it seems to me that that shadow side, again, as my quest, is a big part of that. That finding those parts of myself that otherwise I deny and loving them and receiving them, if nothing else, is a great example of love. You know, self-love is one of these things that often happens in our circles where it now becomes a tagline or a brand for a t-shirt. But self-love truly means that I actually have personal integrity, and through that process, I am refined, I'm evolving, and I'm preparing for wherever it is I'm supposed to be going, be it tomorrow or in another existence, I don't know. So I think it's worthy, but I don't think it's a have-to.
So when I think about, I have a young man in my life who is not, I don't believe he's abnormal in how he presents into the world. He is one of the many young men who are being diagnosed with bipolar, with other forms of what clinicians like to term brains that don't work the way that we think they should work. And his interaction with the world is through anger, which of course is around fear and around a deep sense of disconnect. And when we talk about much of the work that both of you are doing, there's an understanding that the brain understands integrity, that it appreciates wholeness. But what if a brain isn't doing that? That it's in the moment where it only sees the situation as a vehicle for disconnection, anger, and resentment. I just want to understand, how do we work in those moments where we support the finding of that integrity and the foundation of it for them to move in to the acceptance and the love in real time.
May I speak to that? Is that all right with everybody?
Absolutely, please do.
So Kurt and I had a conversation weeks ago, and I said, you know, there's about 5 topics that if you get me started, I'm just ascending fast. And this is one of them, so I will do my best to be tethered. But I will share this. There is a tenet in soul expansion. Your soul is always correct. Your brain is almost always incorrect. And I can prove that through a variety of ways. Within a minute, I can pull out 10 ways. But one of the most common ways that's the most fun is, so I'll play a game. So let's see, Leslie, I'll go with you. Leslie, tell me a recent motion picture that you saw. Don't think too hard.
Oh, motion picture. Oh my gosh, I haven't gone to the films in a while. Okay. The Great Gatsby.
Great. What if I told you you didn't actually see that motion picture? What would you say to me?
It's probably right.
It is. But if I asked you why you're agreeing with me so easily, why? How do you see it? That I'm correct.
Well, I mean, it might have been on a screen and I might have been looking at it, but I don't know if I actually saw it.
Well, you didn't because there was no motion. What you saw was a series of stills frames that go by in rapid succession, faster than your eye can interpret. So you're so easily faked into thinking there's motion. So easily faked that it can invoke emotion in you. Feelings of fear, feelings of joyfulness, feelings of sadness when we see motion picture. But there was no motion. I mean, look, I'm looking at your background. It's pink. The human eye cannot interpret pink. The only frequencies of light that the human eye can see is that in a rainbow. There's no pink in a rainbow. But what they've done is they put colors so closely to one another that we can't actually discern them, so they come across as pink to us. It's phenomenal. My point is, I believe that the brain thinks it's got a grip on things, but it doesn't. We could shake belief systems in an instant. Happens to all of us, especially when there's something traumatic. Our belief systems are shaken. But I'm going to just conclude with this wonderful anecdote. I dated a woman many years ago whose daughter was severely autistic and on the spectrum, to the point where she was heavily medicated, often had to go into a hospital, into a psychiatric hospital. When I started dating this woman, I had never been around any children that were really autistic. And I felt fearful in the beginning because I'd heard that she was violent at times, and she was 18. And if you know anything about anybody, especially when we enraged, people have access to strengths that otherwise seemingly they wouldn't have. She was very violent. And so one day I just heard them speaking about her mother and her father, and they were very dismissive. And I thought, gosh, it's so unfortunate. And I remember her saying she will never be able to do the things you talk about. She can't tell you what she feels. I said, would you let me try? So one of the things that this young girl could do, she really liked to text on her phone to the people that were close to her, but she couldn't actually use a phone. She couldn't easily dialing and hold a conversation. When she spoke, most of the time was unintelligible, but she liked to text and she could do basic words. She really liked emojis. So I had an idea. I stopped off that Michael's, hobby store. I picked up stickers I had with all the emoji symbols, and I brought her home one day and I said, sweetheart, can you show me the emoji on these stickers for feeling joyful, for happiness? And she did. She found it. I put it on a paper. Same thing for feelings of fear, feelings of sadness, and for feelings of anger. She knew exactly what they were. So then I created a small chart for her that in the morning when she woke up, when she came home from school, and before bed, she would draw whichever smiley face or emoji she was feeling. We always knew what she was feeling. She was in touch with her soul, even though her brain theoretically was not functioning correctly. It gives credence to the point that we are absolutely spiritual being having an experience. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I think that we can bypass a lot of that credence that we give to the brain by speaking directly to the soul. So that probably was a long way home to answer your question, but hopefully
Thank you. Thank you. Diane, what are your thoughts?
Daniel, I'm really impressed that you were a kindergarten teacher.
because that's where my mental capacity taps out. It really is.
No, that's where your love is. That's
True.
fabulous. There's not very many men that are kindergarten teachers or first grade, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed it. Leslie, in response to what you're saying, I'm sorry to hear the young man is bipolar. And I can really understand why he reacts with anger all the time. In our world right now, in schools and society, there's so much rejection, so much bullying, so much unkindness, so much exclusion, so much emphasis on social media. And there's so much that does not nurture the self. So I always suggest that families create more family time. They create more time for quietly being exercises, walking in nature together, gratitude circles before they go to bed, cooking together. That uh, Thomas Gordon had a window, and he talked about the middle part of the window being healthy family life. And then the top part of the window was when the child owns the problem. The bottom part of the window is when there's a problem between the parent or the authority figure and the child. So, what's happened in our society is that the normal part of the window is getting smaller and smaller. And so, children are having more problems and they're having more conflicts with parents or authority figures. But we need to increase the middle part of the window again. And I also feel that kids spending all the time on video games and texting, it is actually shortening the capacity to be able to withhold gratification. So they're so dependent on the automatic feedback. But when there's so much chaos in our world, that feedback is often negative. And so they're just desperately searching for any kind of success. So shorten that screen time. Increase the normal things such as walking in nature, doing something that makes a difference. Listen, once I had a mother that came in and she said, my 8-year-old is driving me nuts. And I said, what's happening? She says she talks to me all the time. She says, I just can't stand it anymore. And, I checked, is the child, does she have friends? Is she doing well at school? Is she okay academically? She was fine. So I said to the mother, do you ever listen? Mom said, no. I said, okay, I want you to go home. I want you to sit down with her when she goes home, and I want you to listen. I want you to play with anything she wants to play with. Do that just for 15, 20 minutes every day and come back in a week. She came back in a week. I said, how's it going? She says, I feel great. Her talking's down 90%, and or maybe it was 80%, and we have a great time together. She really likes us time. So increase that time, so that there is a time for him to experience the other part of the self that is definitely there.
And I would say that this young man knows exactly how to take care of himself in that way. He walks, I'd say maybe 4 hours a day.
Wow.
He cycles. He knows how to take himself into spaces that create him a sense of wholeness. And he spends an enormous amount of time with his mother, who deeply, deeply listens.
Wow.
So those are things that are happening. And then yet there becomes a dependency on his mother to be always there listening, to him always being in nature. So what is the journey of helping this young spirit to connect into the integrity of his soul? What is something that he can do? Because he knows how to take care of these elements, but he's in disconnect so many times in any given day. And he's an insomniac. So all these things are disconnected. And then he goes into these wonderful self-care movements, and then these wonderful hours with his mother, who holds the space for deep listening. What is something that he can do to sort of bring the self-care back and the listening into himself back?
So what I'm hearing you say is that he knows intuitively how to create that space for himself, and he does it with his mother, but he doesn't know how to do it with the rest of the world.
That's right.
And so for that, then one of the things that helps is to bring that cognitive awareness. So actually in some of the living values activities, for example, in peace and respect and in love, to create, to be able to define what he likes with what he doesn't like, to be able to define cognitively, to be able to discern what is happening that makes him uncomfortable. What does he like to do? And then to create his empathy for that, knowing that others that are doing these things might feel this way too. And then to teach the social skills. And a lot of, very few people on the planet, sorry, the proportion is vast, have very few what I call benevolently assertive skills. And benevolent assertion is just a wonderful thing, so that you don't have to respond with aggression, but you can respond with benevolent assertion. So this is a skill that's in the book. If mom wants to know it, there's a parenting book I wrote, Nurturing with Love and Wisdom, and she can teach them these skills. It's also in the Living Values book. But it's so wonderful for kids to learn benevolent assertion, because then they don't have to respond with aggression. They have another way to do it. And then they can stay in their wholeness and in their self-respect.
Okay, the Coles Notes version of benevolent assertion.
Benevolent assertion, somebody says to me, well, I think this race group, this religion group is, and I say, the world wouldn't be so rich and so interesting if we were all clones. I see a lot of beauty in that. Blah, 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 blah. So you say something that disagrees, but you do it in such a nice way that there's nothing to argue about, because you're expressing your opinion.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Oh, I've used it with CEOs all my life. So that's the way that a strategist influences benevolent assertion. Absolutely. But I understand. I appreciate that the skills that we use in different circumstances have they take on a different character when we're in different relationships, but the basis of them remain the same. And I love how you've just described that. I just want to, there was another question in the chat, which was around when we are the facilitator role that we can have when we're either practicing inside of the virtues or the values work that you do. And I think Larry mentioned that, he's inside of communities that are without homes, without food, without, meaning of what their basic needs are being met, let alone anything else. And you want to enter in a way that's deeply respectful and caring. And yet there's always that potential tendency of, I'm here to help, I'm doing good. That how do we enter into circumstances that are ripe with the need for what you're offering, but in a way that facilitates the entry and the acceptance?
Daniel, you want to go first?
Sure.
Daniel, why don't you go first on this one?
Sure. Well, one of the things I often talk about in my work, I guess it's a Danielism, is feedback unrequested is criticism. And so on that same note, if I haven't been invited, then who might as say I'm here to help? That help, when it's invited, there's an openness to it. And if it's not invited, there's probably going to be some resistance to it. But, in the Virtues Project, being in 135 different countries, we got a lot of cultures and societies to consider. And what works well, perhaps in North America, may not actually work well in Africa or New Zealand or Tanzania. So I think really getting connected to whom you want to assist on a very foundational level. A lot of us want to go and do good or do the right thing or be of contribution. And one of the most difficult lessons for me in my walk through life and my journey of soul, not everybody wants it or is ready for it. And that's actually part of loving them, is letting them have what it is that they need too. Yeah, I think that's really, really a big deal.
Diane?
When you asked that question, I was reminded of a time when I was in a refugee camp. I think 5 years into our work with the Karen tribe in Thailand, who were from Burma, Myanmar. And I walked in one day and into a little place in a refugee camp. And it was cold and it was rainy. And many of these people had walked for a couple of hours to get there. And anyhow, they looked really uncomfortable. And I just said to them, hey, is anybody cold? Okay, we need some blankets. Is anybody hungry? Okay, we need some food. So we did food and we did blankets before I did the lesson, because we have to meet basic needs. It's really essential. As probably the one quote I use from Ronald Reagan is, not everyone can help everyone, but everyone can help someone.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding Daniel, what you just said, one of the things we do in Living Values is we don't tell them what their values are. We engage them in a reflection process to think about their values. All our materials are written globally.
Mm-hmm.
So that, for example, if their homework is to go home and do something loving for their family, it's written globally, because that's going to be different depending on the culture,
Absolutely.
the socioeconomic status, everything.
Absolutely.
And one other thing, yeah, I agree. So one other thing, though, is that I think inside of us, that I know that with the refugees, one of the things that they said to me is, we've never been treated like this by anyone before.
Mm.
And I think that our respect for other human beings and our way of interacting with them has to be such that they would never dream of thinking that we're better than.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that our attitude, our vibration, our, equality, that my view of the world is that God creates a feeling that we belong to Him. Do we create that feeling with others, and that we're family, we're equal? So I think this feeling of respect is wonderful. And I was very lucky to have a father who never knew that there was a stranger, because he really, really treated everyone as an equal, including me. I didn't know that women were supposed to be inferior until I went to UCLA. I learned it in a sociology class. I thought, really? My dad didn't treat me
I
like
can't
that.
imagine how you took that in, but you had the foundation to be able to take that in, which was
I thought, how strange.
So we're going to finish with a meditation, but before we do, this whole dialogue was about character development in the time of Code Red. And I just want to end with, what is character development in the time of Code Red? So instead of starting with it, I'm finishing with it. When you think about where we are, the world in which we find ourselves, the clock is on. We have an incredible opportunity to regenerate this earth. And we also have deep shadow in play right now in how we've treated this beautiful planet. So how would you define character development in this time and place?
Daniel, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Or you want me to?
Oh, either way, I'm content. Ladies first, please. I like to be chivalrous.
Okay. I think for us as adults, our development of character is really taking a serious inventory about our own life and what we're doing and educating ourselves. There is so much we can do. I mean, do you ever buy a plastic bottle of water? Do you know that it takes 3 times the amount of water in that bottle to make a plastic bottle and 1/3 of the quantity in oil to make that plastic bottle? So to step up to the plate in terms of our own character development and educate ourselves and do everything we can to support our planet. There's hundreds of things we can do, you know, from planting trees to our diet, to our use of water, to being organic. Do you realize that it's the lack of organic fertilizer that have created 405 dead zones in the ocean?
Mm-hmm.
And I could go on and on, obviously. But for children, for the little ones to be friends of the earth, to have parents help them choose things that they can do as a family. I think that our youth are completely distraught about this. I think we need to give them hope by helping them know that each one of us makes a difference and that we can all do it together. And I really feel that. I feel there's so much hope, and I think we can do it, but we need more of us. So character development, to see your possibilities, but for children, we need to provide the support through ways of teachings and information and attitude to create hope in them. And they desperately need it at this point in time.
Thanks, Diane. Daniel.
And just be the change you want to see. There's so much discord in our society, but keep your hope and know that we will get there, and be the change that you want to see. Don't go into worry or stress, but spread that light, because that consciousness of that peace, I feel, is increasing around the planet. And I think that will help everyone change.
Thanks, Diane. Daniel.
So Diane used the word hope a few times, which of course would then be the antithesis of indifference, of apathy. And we live in a highly indifferent and apathetic culture. You know, we talk about isms, right? Alcoholism, workaholism, doesn't matter what it is. But the norm is always dictated by the mass, is it not? You go back 100 years, if you were rotund, you were considered sexy. It demonstrated that you had wealth, that you could eat. Yeah. So the norm is always dictated by the mass. It's an unfortunate tipping point, because if we look at where we are today, the acceptance of our culture, the acceptance of reality TV, the acceptance of a culture that is consistently berated, shamed, and downtrodden. Hope is the only thing we have running for us, and it's not an easy thing to instill in a culture that already has experienced that they're downtrodden. But that is absolutely going to be what the key is. The research, it used to be when we were younger children, that was what, 1-to-1 for every negative. You had to say a positive to balance it out. But the research is actually, it's a 1-to-5. For every negative criticism, you need 5 positives. My whole creed is, I don't have that kind of time. I'll just stick on the positive so I don't have to make up that deficit. But really, it's creating, I think, foundational systems in the home, and where, of course, it begins. And then also with our loved ones, with the people we meet on the street, and truly modeling what it means to bringing it full circle back to cooperation, appreciating going out of your way to see those things in others, which, I mean, we all have somebody in our life that does that. And when we're around them, we're enlivened. We want to be more with them, around them more. And if we do that, that's where the inspiration comes from. That gives us the space of the influence that we need. I think that's it's a really big place to go.
So, what I pick up from all of that is that I love the fact that you divinely were gifted cooperation today in the resilience deck. But to cooperate, I need to know what your gifts are, so I can match my gifts with your gifts. And so deeply knowing who we are cooperating with and being in relationship with them. So we often, we bring people together and say, well, let's all cooperate. Well, okay, but who are you and who am I? And how does the alchemy of us together co-create? It's in the deep knowing
Absolutely.
that cooperation comes. So
Absolutely.
I want to thank both of you for such a delightful inside your mind experience. I know Kurt's going to finish us off with the Peacemaker meditation. Stay on. We're going to do it with Kurt, and then I'm going to do the close.
Leslie, thank you so very, very much.
Yes.
You are amazing.
She's magical. Queen Bee is what I call her.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. To be able to make peace, we have to be aware of it. And to be aware of peace, we get to put it into our mind physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There's the Peacemaker meditation. If everybody would please lean forward and have your hands out like as if you're holding a tray as you lean forward. And the tray, your arms are basically parallel to the ground. And as you're ready to breathe in, you breathe in peace in everything and you put it at your heart, because that's where the heart is, and everything with peace as we bend forward. So it's peace in everything, everything with peace. And the movement makes it a biological feel. It gets it into your body. So there's something called muscle memory. And we are doing this very easily and slowly. Peace in everything, everything with peace. And we can do it at our own rate. Peace in everything, everything with peace. Because we're peaceful inside, it comes outside. And as there's more outside, it comes inside and it spreads. And whenever we have an opportunity to use this, because there's not so much peace out there right now, you can bring yourself into doing this. And if you're in a place where you can't do the bending forward and back and so on, you can just do it mentally. Peace in everything, everything with peace. And we'll flow with this. Periodically during the day, you catch somebody triggering you. And you can choose, because you got triggered, to react peacefully because you've got that in mind more throughout your day. It's in any language. Doesn't have to be a mantra like in Sanskrit or Hebrew or what, because it has to resonate in our thought process, and things come forth. The more we think about, the more we get. Thank you.
Kurt, you're such a joy. And, the Peace Lab continues on. And I want to thank you so much for gathering us together today and bringing us into this moment with one another. And I just want to say you will be going to the after chat, Kurt, and I want to suggest Diane and Daniel, if you'd like to go into the after chat after this, there's a lovely group of folks. The link is in the chat to join and have a further dialogue on what this is. I want to just really underline the gifting of not only your wisdom and your time, but the ways in which your gifting is continuing. So Diane, the fact that we've got all these free resources that now we know how to access and we can benefit from, how we can share them with ourselves and others. And Daniel, your very beautiful gifts of how we can be part of the virtues shop by purchasing, we're also giving, but also how you've made it really easy for us to do that and easy for us to engage with you. These are great gifts at a really important time. And I want to underline the absolute privilege it is for me to be in conversation with those who are so much walking the talk. So a great thank you, Kurt, for gathering, Diane, for the brilliance of your soul resonance, and Daniel, I can't wait to do some more conversations with you. And I know that the Virtues Project actually is in Calgary, Alberta as well. And I'm going to find myself those people, because it sounds to me.
You don't have to. I can just give you the names and addresses.
I think that sounds good. I could just wander, but that's my life. So,
The key about all this is that we get to take that action, and this idea about gifting, people can buy that for other people and share, just like share that meditation practice and share those books or the ideas and the websites and everything. As we do it, we can do it on social media, any which way, and just walking down the street smiling.
Absolutely. Walking down the street smiling. That's a really great way to say walk down the street smiling as we wrap on this Friday session. Thank you, all of you, for hanging in with us, for being in conversation with us, for helping us pull the card cooperation. I can't believe that card was the one that we got. And it spills out to everything that we do from this moment on in today. And I just want to remind all our listeners that on Monday, we have an incredible week lined up for you. It is with Nina and Ray Kirst, who are doing the shaman's journey. And so for 5 days, we're going to be inside the shaman experience. And in particular, on Monday, we're going to go into the Andean Shama Summit. And it's the culture and tradition of the Quiro people. Mm-hmm. So what fun is that going to be, and what a transcendence we're going to be able to experience on Monday. But before then, there's Saturday and Sunday. I wish you joy. I wish you peace. I wish you love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love you all.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.